I grew up in Lagos, Nigeria. I came from a close-knitted family, even though I came from a poor family. But they gave me education with the instruction that this is the tool that will help me to dig my way out of poverty and ignorance. I came without a dime in my pocket. All I had was big dreams, determination to succeed, and the resilience. So coming from another country gave me that insight to be able to understand and deal with people from different backgrounds.
I was walking into Kroger to pick up a prescription for my mom. Upon approaching the pharmacy, I slipped and fell in some liquid. I went to see my regular doctor, and that is when I knew that there was more going on from that fall. I then called Mr. Olawale, talked to him and let him know what was going on. I could just say that he's very professional and knowledgeable about what he does. He's very passionate about what he does, and he cares about his clients. I felt like I was a part of the Olawale family.
The goal is to make sure that our clients will leave feeling that someone gets them, knowing that someone was able to be the voice for them.
We needed an attorney because we needed somebody who understood the relationship between our case and the law. We had been through 4 different lawyers. We were very desperate. We knew from what we had heard that Emmanuel Olawale was the man, who could take us through that experience and see us through and give us the kind of outcome we were looking for. For him, your case is personal. He gave us hope. He gave us encouragement, and we knew that we had found the right man that would see us through.
Just know that when you're coming through the door, you're coming in through a place where you will be accepted and welcome as family, where you'll be seen as a person. At the Olawale Law Firm, we get you. We understand you. Trust us. Welcome to this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. I have a special guest with me today. His name is Zach Gwin, and he is going to be teaching us or telling us about how to protect our property from messy neighbors and telling us about his campaign. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Emmanuel.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I'm originally from Canton, Ohio, up in Northeast Ohio. Graduated from Glen Oak High School and then attended Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, where I met my wife. From there, then attended The Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. While I was there, I had the opportunity to intern at the Columbus City Attorney's Office, and after graduating was hired by then City Attorney Rick Pfeiffer to become an assistant city attorney. Was there with that office for about 3 years, had the opportunity to try a lot of cases, motion hearings, do some work at the Court of Appeals, and then took some time out and was in private practice for about a year. Did criminal defense and some civil litigation, personal injury, education law, and then was called back to the city attorney's office to join a group called the Zone Initiative, which deals with public nuisance complaints. And I've been doing that now for about 4 years.
Thank you. In a nutshell, what Zach is trying to say is that he's a young man with an old man's experience. And I'm so glad you came on the show. What was it like growing up in Canton, Ohio?
Yeah, so, Canton, Ohio is a great little town, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Grew up with family who was very invested in public service and, an idyllic upbringing there in Canton.
Okay. And what was high school like for you? Did you play sports?
I did. I tried out a little bit of everything, but found my place. I was captain of the wrestling team Was all county and wrestling, and then ran cross country, which kind of had a little bit of a relationship in terms of conditioning, things like that. Had the opportunity to go to Boys State back in high school, where you have the opportunity to kind of create a model government for the city or for the state. And actually, during Boys State, I was a judge, served as a judge there. So hopefully, portending things.
Hopefully, did you see yourself as a lawyer even while you're in high school?
Yeah, there were a lot of opportunities where I had a chance. I was in a group called Teen Court, which is where a group of high school students get to serve as either a prosecutor, or you can be a defense attorney or a juror or the judge, dealing with other juveniles who commit minor or misdemeanor offenses. And so when I had that opportunity to be in court, I really engaged with it, and it kind of inspired me very much to find my place here.
Yeah. So, what inspired your affinity for the law and the study of law in itself?
You know, just the opportunity to really make a difference in people's lives. I saw it as a way to initiate change. A lot of attorneys have that ability and can move in those ways. And then it also, attorneys have the ability to do, not necessarily practice law, but to impact their communities in a way that someone without a law degree might not have.
Exactly. And are you the first lawyer in your family?
No, I've had some other lawyers in the family. My sister is actually an attorney in town as well.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. You majored in political science and sociology. Why these two courses?
Politics was always of interest to me. And actually, while I was studying at Miami University, I had the opportunity to work in Washington, D.C. for Senator Sherrod Brown in their press office. And that really just kind of further inspired me to stay involved in politics, political science. Sociology, really just the study of the people, understanding why folks do the things they are, how our communities and cultures are set up. Was just a great education in that.
What was it like working for Senator Sherrod Brown in Washington, D.C.? I think you spent a whole summer there.
Yes, yeah. It was part of a program where we had the opportunity to meet with a lot of different folks all across DC. We got to meet with Justice Clarence Thomas. We met with actually Mike Pence when he was still a representative in the House. A lot of different folks, folks from the CIA, folks from the FBI, just organizations all over. And so it was really an immersive experience. And it's an incredible city, especially for a young person, I would say. There's a lot of energy. Folks are all there to work hard and really, I think almost all care deeply about the country and their respective states and cities. And with Senator Brown, it was no exception, just really trying to work for the people of Ohio.
What is Senator Sherrod Brown like close up?
It really is. You see what you get. He is just a kind and generous person, and is interested in you, regardless of whether you're just a low-level intern, asks you about yourself, where you're from, what you're interested in. He was just a very dynamic, engaging guy.
And you also volunteered for President Obama's presidential campaign. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, that was so that would have been my freshman year during his first campaign for president, and it was getting out there and canvassing and talking to voters, trying to work with the Young Voter Coalition that was in college.
Did you feel like you're part of the movement that changed the country?
I don't know if I'd go that far, but it's always been something about staying engaged in civics, which I think is extremely important for folks of all ages, which I've tried to live by.
Now let's talk about public nuisance. What does public nuisance mean?
So, public nuisance can kind of be a bit of a misnomer because when folks think about a nuisance, they think about an annoyance. Something like a fly buzzing around your head is think of a nuisance. But public nuisance, legal term for anything, things that are damaging the community in ways that are sometimes difficult to define. And in our cases, we practice exclusively in the environmental court in Franklin County Municipal Court, which is a court unlike any other. And I don't mean that just colloquially. It literally, there are no other environmental courts that perform the way that our court does. And that's a result of special legislation that was passed in the Ohio House a number of years ago. And so we deal with everything from blighted, vacant, abandoned properties, uh, zoning issues throughout the city, uh, public health issues such as lead paint contamination in houses, drug houses, sewer septic connections. It really runs the gamut. And environmental court also handles issues with animal abuse, things like that can also occur within Franklin County.
So, what are those things that constitute public nuisance?
So, what we typically bring is an action for injunctive relief, which is just asking the court for an order for someone to do or to stop doing something. So, we're talking about, say, a vacant and abandoned property. So, the idea is that, the owner of this property is in violation of city code. They need to address the code violations, whether it's a damaged roof or some other condition that constitutes a public nuisance under Columbus City Code. And so we file the case and we ask the court for the remedy of an order to bring it into compliance. If they don't, then we can ask the court to hold them in contempt. From there are a number of options, reducing those to a judgment, and a program that we've seen a lot of success with called receivership, which is meant to bring those properties into productive use via the court appointing an entity to take over the property, repair it, and then potentially sell it for those specifically vacant and abandoned properties. But, the court is very much, at least our role, very much about working with the community. So, the issue of high grass and weeds or cars parked on the front lawn certainly are, issues that we do address. But we also recognize that a lot of property owners would love to have the opportunity to fix up their property, but financially are just not there. And so what we can do is look to provide them with resources. And we actually have a program. I apologize. Can you still hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
So we have a program called the Owner Occupied Initiative, which focuses on bringing together folks from the Columbus Legal Aid Society, Habitat for Humanity, Columbus Public Health, Columbus Housing, and some of our other resource providers to make repairs to individuals' property and really just kind of troubleshoot some of the issues that they might be dealing with.
Okay. How does nuisance affect a neighborhood?
So going back to vacant and abandoned properties, and for some folks maybe living in certain parts of town, they might not know how serious of an issue that is. But, having a vacant property that has been totally abandoned next to your house has a real cost, and it has a real cost on the city. They soak up a disproportionate share of police resources. They frequently can catch on fire. You can have folks using or committing other illegal activity at the property, and they degrade property values for folks all around. And so for that reason, these cases are not, just about public nuisance. They very much are about improving communities, which it's a real honor to get to do that sort of work and do that.
How can someone living next to an abandoned building report that building to the city?
Sure. Columbus 311, and I'll just tell you 614-645-3111 is a line that accepts complaints from the city for any sort of code violation. So damage, vacant abandoned properties, other things such as solid waste, anything that's being kept out of compliance with city code can be reported. And then Columbus Code Enforcement will go out and issue an order for them to correct. And if it is not corrected, then they can refer that to our office for filing of a complaint.
And what does the word abatement mean in the in the context of nuisance?
Yeah, abatement is just curing the issue, and whether or not that is taken care of by the city or by the owner or by a private party that the city the court appoints, it is the process of remedying those issues and improving the property.
In a situation where the landlord or the person who owns the property is not financially capable of doing that, what next?
So, like I said, it really depends on the circumstances. So an owner occupied property, we take maybe a lighter hand on things because we understand, like I said, there are a lot of folks out there, especially in some of our struggling communities, that would love to be able to put a new roof on their house. But that's thousands of dollars that, is going towards their electric bill and their food and, the immediate needs. So, like I said, trying to work with those folks to find them resources is first and foremost. But for landlords and for-profit properties, very much we look at the idea that these folks have affirmatively looking to take on the obligation of trying to rent out to folks, and so they have some obligation not just to the neighborhood but also to their tenants to make sure that they're living in safe and healthy conditions. So for those, obviously working with them as long as they're making progress, but if they either ignore us or decide that they're not going to do it in any sort of timely fashion, then we would at that point be asking the court to order them to do it.
Are there punishments for public nuisance?
Yes. So in our cases, they are civil. So contempt typically consists of fines that accrue on the property, and the court can order those anywhere from $100 to $1,000 a day for daily contempt. Those higher fines have been reserved often for what we have sometimes are large-scale apartment complexes that house, dozens or even hundreds of people that have conditions that are unsafe and are actively harming the residents. And so what the court can do then is impose those fines. And because all of our cases are in rem, the fines actually attach to the real property. So it serves as a lien. So selling the property doesn't get you out from under the fines. There are some very rare instances where the court has felt that someone or the violations or the issues are so egregious that criminal contempt penalties are appropriate, but that is very much the exception.
Yeah. In a situation where the owner of the property isn't able to pay the fine, so does the city foreclose on that property?
So the city is not actively foreclosing on a lot of properties. And again, so we have rare instances where an owner occupant, what would love to fix up their house and, fines might have accrued, but typically those just sit as a lien on the property, which would have to be addressed if it were ever to sell.
Okay, so the person will not be able to sell the property without taking care of those liens. So whoever wants to buy that property is buying the property subject to the lien.
Typically, a title company will, do a search and they'll see that there's that lien out there.
Okay. And is there something called private nuisance?
Yeah, private nuisance, public nuisance, really essentially the same concept, the idea that activity is harming the community. Same concept there.
Okay. And let's go through some scenarios and tell me what constitutes nuisance. How about loud music?
Loud music can be because sometimes, well, what you have is a city ordinance with regards to the appropriate level of noise. And any sort of violation we can file for injunctive relief to order them to cease that activity.
Okay. A pool at the back of the house without any kind of protection.
So that is, we do not file public nuisance complaints for that. That would be, I don't think the city necessarily has an ordinance that we enforce through public nuisance with regards to pools and things like that.
Peeling paint.
Sure. Bare exposed wood surfaces that are then subject to rotting wood, those can be filed under the housing code within the city.
Having a workshop on the lawn, like a mechanical workshop. Listen.
Oh, if you're running an auto repair business on your front lawn,
yes,
that does come through more than you would expect. Folks who just like to work on cars and will sometimes leave them in the front lawn. We would file for improper storage of those vehicles.
Not cutting your grass or maintaining the lawn.
That can also end you up in court. I think maybe people have maybe an overstated understanding of how often that really happens. I would say fewer than 3%, 4% of our cases deal with just somebody who hasn't cut their grass. And for vacant and abandoned properties, the city, I think, has acknowledged it's such an issue that the city actually goes out and cuts grass for vacant properties and then just attaches those as a lien on the tax bill.
And selling drugs out of the house.
Yes, this is a large portion of what my public nuisance cases involve. So I work out here on the west side, so that includes Franklinton and the Hilltop parts of what most people would think is Grove City, but fall within the city limits, and the same for Westland and the Hilliard area. And so, in some of our neighborhoods, we have issues where folks are selling drugs out of either a rental property or their home or the home of a relative. And so what we can do is, after conducting an investigation with typically Columbus Police or some of our suburban police departments or the sheriff's office, we establish that you have nuisance activity taking place at a residence. A nuisance activity in this sense is defined under Ohio Revised Code 3767, and then also within the city code. And so under 3767, the type of predicate offenses are felony narcotics sales, prostitution, illegal gambling, and even liquor offenses. And so you have to establish that activity is taking place, and then you do have to provide the owner with notice and an opportunity to abate that, obviously meaning find some way to stop that activity. So after we notify them of the nuisance activity, if they have not taken the correct steps to address it, and we establish that the activity is still taking place, we can file a complaint in the form of a preliminary injunction, where we typically would ask the court for authority to go out, remove the occupants, and board up the property. While I've been with the unit, I believe I've filed on over 50 different drug houses that we've closed down. And, it's easy to say, oh, we've closed down 50 drug houses in just kind of the abstract. But, these are really properties that have an influence on the neighborhood and on the health and safety of the residents. I actually live out here on the west side. I live in Franklinton. And, here in our neighborhood, we do have some challenges. Average life expectancy is only 60 years old in our neighborhood. And, addiction and drug sales can be an issue. I've actually, 2 of the drug houses that we've closed down have been on my street. So understanding that these really are a hazard to folks, it means a lot to the folks when you file these cases and you shut down something. And I've gone out to the houses afterwards and talked to neighbors, and they say, I couldn't let my kids outside. I didn't feel safe having them play in the street because they knew that this activity was going on, and they, were wondering, when's it going to stop?
Can people be arrested for a nuisance case?
So there are times when we name the individual with care and control, or the individual that we can establish has care and control and is conducting the nuisance activity. We can name them in their personal capacity within our civil cases, but those are not, normally you'd have a criminal case. So if you have maybe a felony trafficking case or some sort of narcotics offense, that might take place as part of the larger investigation. But with our case, they are not cases where we're going out and arresting people for the nuisance activity.
Okay, so there have to be some kind of an underlying crime alongside the nuisance before people can be criminally prosecuted.
Yeah, just any sort of normal investigation that would be for a trafficking type offense, and our officers, our detectives would gather that evidence in order to file that type of charge. But our cases are very much focused on real property and property owners as opposed to the individual actors. So, maybe part of the idea is that, and I'll use rental properties as the example in this case, is that, a person who owns 4 or 5 rental properties, can't just sit there and collect a rent check and not worry about what's actually taking place at their property. And there are a lot of folks who do a good job with rental properties, take care of them, and folks who don't do a good job harm the rest of the bunch.
Do you sometimes go after commercial properties?
There are times when commercial properties come under our purview, bars or dangerous clubs that are operating either after hours or have felony offenses of violence. So a lot of what drives our investigations are things like overdoses, violent felonies such as homicides, shootings, things like that. And so we really work with the numbers to see, what is soaking up a disproportionate share of police resources in an area, because we know, police resources can be spread thin. And so the idea that police have responded to this bar or this hotel or this market, 60 times in the past 3 months, we look at that to kind of, drive our investigations and drive our nuisance filings.
Thank you. Does nightclubs sometimes fall under your purview when it comes to the issue of nuisance?
Yes. So, as I was saying, with regards to predicate offenses, alcohol, liquor violations, selling without permit, things like that can fall within our cases. But also, we conduct the objections for the transfer of liquor permits, and specifically one attorney in our shop handles those and looks at different alcohol-related offenses, underage sales beyond the permit that they have, things like that.
Can private citizens bring their own lawsuit against a neighbor for nuisance?
Yes. So under 3767, certain nuisance type cases can be brought by a private citizen, can be brought by the state attorney general. It really is a pretty, it's a powerful statute in the ability to bring cases for that type of nuisance activity that falls under 3767.
Okay. You talked about shutting down some drug houses. Can you tell us about 1 or 2 notable cases you've handled to abate public nuisance?
Sure. So an old case I had, it was, so a lot of our activity is also being involved in the community and really connecting with folks, with the original idea of the office being that it's great to have a bunch of attorneys who are focused on public nuisance issues. But if they just, are sitting in the office or they're in the courtroom, they don't necessarily have a feel or an understanding of exactly, what the issues are in the community. So a big part of our job is getting out there to things like area commission meetings, civic associations, block watches, and just connecting with the community in a way that we can learn about nuisance properties, problems in an area before, we look on a call sheet and see that things are getting out of control. So in one particular instance, I had a neighborhood advocate who contacted me and said, we're having a camping trip at one of our gardens in the neighborhood, and all the kids were going to come out and stay in their tents and spend the night and have a good time. But she said there's this house across the street that is just out of control with the amount of traffic that's coming and going, with the police runs. And, after some investigation, we found that absolutely, there was some investigation that was already pending. It involved the ATF, it involved Columbus Police. And we saw an opportunity where, the activity had been taking place. The owner was well aware that it was taking place and wasn't abating the nuisance activity. So we filed, and shortly thereafter, we were lucky in terms of the timing. Shortly thereafter, the kids were able to have their camping trip, and they actually sent me a picture showing them out there having a good time, and it's very rewarding, things like that.
Thank you. And you're currently running for office to become a judge.
Yes.
Can you tell us about your campaign?
Yes. So I am running for Franklin County Common Pleas Court, and that is a 6-year term. And Franklin County Common Pleas handles things over $15,000 with lawsuits, and all felonies, and a number of other cases. Also, other cases for injunctive relief that might be filed. And running with a perspective that in my time, I've worked, volunteered, and tried to really understand the community. And what I would really like to bring to the courthouse is, the interest and the understanding and the perspective that we have in some of our underserved communities that might not necessarily, where we might not necessarily have that perspective currently in the courthouse.
And what prompted you to run for office at this time?
I really felt that, in my time out in the neighborhood and working with folks, that they didn't necessarily have a voice or have a perspective on the bench that reflected that. And I'm not saying that, anybody can't understand, someone who doesn't live in a neighborhood or work in a neighborhood can't not understand it. But I felt that I could bring that voice to the courthouse. And I feel like, now is the time and it's needed.
And what kind of cases will you be handling as a judge?
Yeah, so any suit with claim for relief in excess of $15,000, felonies, anything within Franklin County. They also cover cases that might come out of the state house, and again, cases for injunctive relief.
Okay. And as a judge of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas General Division, when it comes to the hierarchy of courts, where does that court falls into, so that people know which court or judge they're voting for?
Sure. So it is a trial level court. So those cases that I just described, so not before they might go to appeal. So a decision, any jury, you're thinking about a jury trial, you're thinking about law and order. It's those type of courtrooms where you have your trials, you have your cases heard like that.
Okay. And what are those personal values you have that you believe will aid you in being a judge?
It's very much about, I think, trying to put your shoes and understanding where all parties are coming from. So, that case, whatever case you're looking at, is important to the parties. That's the reason they're there. It's important to them. And so really valuing and understanding that everyone there deserves to be heard. And it's important to at least try to put yourself in the shoes of every party that's there. And so whether in a criminal case, that's understanding, the defendant's rights, understanding the victim or the alleged victim in a case and what they have gone through, and understanding, the prosecutor's position and that of the defense attorney, trying to protect the rights of their client. And with that perspective, just trying to be open-minded, fair, impartial.
You mentioned understanding the victims and all the parties. That's empathy. In the past, you worked as a victim's advocate. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So back in Canton, Ohio, worked for the Stark County Prosecutor's Office as a victim witness advocate. And with that, our job was to help victims of crime, anything from economic crimes to violent felonies, even families of victims, work, help them navigate their way through the courthouse. We often think about, well, you have the prosecutor, you have the defendant, you have the defense attorney, and maybe you have the police. But, it's important to consider and now the rights and the interest of the victim in the case. And, now constitutionally, they do have specific rights as victims in cases. And you have to take that into consideration and understand that, to really heal, sometimes there are chances to make them whole.
Thank you. You also worked for a private practice after you left law school. You handle personal injury cases, medical malpractice cases, and some other cases. Tell us a bit about what you did at our law firm.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to practice in criminal defense, practiced all throughout Central Ohio, Franklin, Licking, Union, and Delaware County, handling misdemeanors and felonies. And it, from the perspective of the judiciary, it's always good to get a different feel for how different courtrooms work, how different counties handle cases, and understanding just kind of what values different judges bring to the table. And so in practicing that was a great opportunity on the civil side with personal injury and education law, dealing with clients, victims of, medical malpractice and, anything from car accidents and beyond. Important to just gain some education on, civil litigation, depositions, things like that, and also practicing some education law, defending students, defending administrators, and even professors at the Court of Appeals for wrongful termination, things like that.
And how did you end up at the city attorney's office?
I apologize, I missed that.
I said, how did you end up at your current job?
Yeah, so I moved here to Franklinton out on the west side in around 2016, while I was still with the prosecutor's office, and then went out into private practice. And while I was living in the neighborhood, got very involved. So I became a member of the Franklinton Area Commission, volunteered as a tutor at our Gladden Community House, and really just tried to really connect with the community and stay involved and do everything I can to improve the life of residents. And so a job opened up representing the West Side for the city attorney's office in our zone initiative. And so took the opportunity and said, this is something that might not come up again, and found my way back.
Great. Now, before you used to work there and you left for private practice.
Yes.
Before you left on your first stint, what kind of cases did you handle?
So handled misdemeanor cases, anything from your speeding ticket to vehicular homicide, and had the opportunity to practice in front of multiple judges. The way they handle it with the city attorney's office is you typically are on a 6-month to 1-year rotation where you exclusively practice in front of one judge so that you can keep track of cases, throughout the life of them. And that was another great opportunity to see a lot of different judges, how they handle cases, and just the way the courtroom moves and works.
Do you have any judge in particular that inspires you or that you'd like to be like?
So there are, there's definitely something to take from each judge. Everybody has a different perspective, things that you admire about them, but there are 3 that really kind of come to mind. Judge Ann Taylor, who is no longer on the bench, just her ability to really connect with people and understand people is something that I aspire to do. Judge Bill Pollitt, who sadly is no longer with us, is just an incredible individual, and a guy who also really understood people, had real life experience that he brought to the bench that was especially valuable. And then I would say Judge Dan Hawkins, who's now common pleas judge. When he was our environmental court judge, just his legal knowledge, his ability to handle cases, and his temperament, just incredible, something that I would love to mirror.
Thank you. And as a member of the Franklinton Commission, what did you do?
So I currently serve as vice chair of the commission, and so the body is advisory, and we receive cases for zoning and variances that come to the city. And so Franklinton is seeing a lot of development, and it is a historically under-resourced community. And, you're seeing big projects where folks want to put in large apartment complexes and different commercial type structures. And so we vote on, whether something might get changed from a residential property to a commercial property. And while not binding, it's really an opportunity for the community to communicate to folks like city council about what's important to us and, what we want to see for the future of the neighborhood. And what's been fortunate is that, as folks come asking to change zoning or ask for variances, we sometimes have the ability to advocate for more affordable housing, units that are income protected, things like that. And that's been, it's very important, especially as you see rents rise, home value prices change, trying to maintain, that mixed income housing for everybody.
Thank you. At some point, you worked for the Democratic Caucus.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So while in law school, was part of a legislation group and had the opportunity to work for the House Minority Caucus. And so there had the opportunity to prepare representatives for testimony, review drafts of bills, provide editing there, and just working with representatives on kind of advocating for their priorities. And very fun place to work. The State House is an incredible building, and it's fun to see, real world changes happening.
You also, one of the editors of the journal while in law school, the Criminal Law Journal. What was that like?
Yes. So, as I was chief managing editor, and so our role was to review articles, provide edits, and prepare different articles from professors or other authors, prepare them for publication. And as anybody knows, it can be a tedious process, and you are really focused on perfection, everything from blue book to style, things like that. But it is, it's a valuable tool in learning how to edit and review and getting better at writing, which is, as you know, very important as an attorney, your ability to write.
And having, worked with politicians and office holders, you've interned with Sherrod Brown, you volunteered for President Obama's campaign, you work with the Legislative Caucus, you've tried cases in municipal court, criminal cases, misdemeanor felonies, and things like that. And you work with several judges while a city as an assistant city attorney. So with all this experience combined, how do you think, or how are these experiences, how would you translate them to being a judge?
Yeah, so I think kind of, as I was saying, with regards to drawing something from each judge that you practice in front of, a well-rounded, balanced legal experience, political experience, and real life experience, you want to draw on all of those, I believe, when you're a judge. You need to, understand, or at least be willing to learn about, different areas of law and different perspectives. And so with that said, I think having, as you graciously described, all of that background, that's what I would like to bring to the bench.
Okay. What do you want the people of Franklin County to remember about you when they go to the polls or while they're thinking of who to vote for?
Well, I hope they consider that, I'm a very passionate community advocate. I've been fighting for the people of Franklin County and constituents on the west side for as long as I've lived here, and that I'm an individual who values community and wants to bring that perspective to the bench.
And how is Margaret, your wife, and Ronan, your son, handling your very busy campaign schedule?
They are being real troopers about it. Ronan is 3, so he doesn't have much choice about being on the campaign trail. He is with us no matter what. But it's good. My current role, I would say, definitely helps prepare me for this type of thing. It's not unusual for me to be out 2, 3, 4 nights a week at, a block watch or a civic association, talking to neighbors. So being at a campaign event or doing basically the same thing isn't that big a transition, but it's, it is a lot of work, and, it's worthwhile. And it's really an honor to just get to meet a lot of different people throughout the county who, you can learn from. You learn what's important to them. You listen to folks. It's hard work, but it really is worth it.
And how can people reach you?
Sure. They can reach me at my website, which is gwinforjudge.com. They can email me at gwinforjudge@gmail.com, or they can check out our Facebook. If you just search Zach Gwin for Judge on Facebook, or even look for us on Instagram. We are a full-fledged social media juggernaut.
And you just got endorsed by, was it Run for Something?
Yes. So it is a national organization focused on young folks who are looking to jump into the political world. And, I think they saw that we are, we have a good direction in our campaign, and they were confident in our ability to win our race.
Now, what do you think? What would you say to young people out there who are thinking of running for political office or getting politically active? What advice would you have for them?
I would just say, in terms of getting active, just jump in. It's hard. It feels uncomfortable. It's like when people say networking, what does it really mean? But in terms of getting active, just, talk to somebody who you understand to be in that world. Even go to your local party, whether it's Republican or Democrat, or if you want to work with a progressive or a conservative, find those folks, let them know you're interested, and, just saying, who needs help? Because you'd be amazed how much people, candidates, anybody involved just really appreciates folks who want to help, who want to be involved. That is the first step.
Thank you. And you've been educating us about public nuisance for almost the last hour. So what does coming on this show, The Legal Angle, means to you?
I really enjoy the opportunity to get to help people understand exactly what it is we do, because, as I tell folks, it's tough to give somebody the 60-second elevator pitch about what our group does, because it is so varied. But, letting people know that, our office really cares about improving the quality of life of our residents, listening to their issues, the very fact that we've dedicated specific attorneys. And so there's 5 of us in our shop that are each assigned to a different part of town. Just reminding folks that, we are here, we want to be available. We really are about trying to address the stressors in a neighborhood. And so just any type of education, anytime I can talk about that and help people That's just an honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on Legal Angle. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for educating our audience about nuisance, how to protect themselves, and how to report nuisance and other things. You are appreciated.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on, and it's just been a great conversation. I would love to interview you. You've got talk about an interesting life. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Thank you. We'll talk about that. And for those of you watching the show or listening to this as a podcast, thank you for giving us your time. Until next time, stay safe. Bye for now.